The abuse affair surrounding the former head of the Scottish regional government is increasingly affecting the incumbent First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Did the politician know about the allegations against her party colleague much earlier? The Alex Salmond case becomes a personal burden for Nicola Sturgeon. The Committee of Inquiry into the allegations of abuse against the former head of the Scottish regional government is now putting the incumbent head of government under increasing pressure. As Scottish media reported on Thursday, the committee accuses Sturgeon in its final report of having deceived Parliament in the affair. She herself had known about the allegations against her party comrade and long-term mentor much earlier, but may not have acted, reports British media. The report has not yet been officially published. Salmond had been accused of sexual assault against several women after the end of his tenure, including attempted rape. Salmond denied the allegations and also resisted the Scottish government's investigation of the case. In 2019, he resigned from the Scottish National Party, the SNP, in protest. In March 2020, a court acquitted him of the allegations. The government of his successor, Sturgeon, called on the police at the beginning of the affair after an internal investigation. The investigation committee into her handling of the affair is, among other things, about the question of when exactly she found out about the allegations against her former mentor. According to the reports, the committee found in its report that Sturgeon had provided contradicting and inaccurate information about a meeting and thus deceived Parliament. However, she may have done this out of ignorance and not necessarily with intent or knowingly. That means not with full knowledge of all the facts. It continues. According to The Guardian, Sturgeon defended herself in an interview on Sky News. The members of the committee are biased. The first leaks from the as yet unpublished report are partisan. Let's wait for the final report, said the politician. The report comes at an inopportune time for Sturgeon. Elections are due in Scotland in May, and so far the SNP has been expected to win. The ambitious regional politician, a bitter opponent of Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson, has linked the election with the demand for another independence referendum in Scotland. Sturgeon wants Scotland to rejoin the EU after a new referendum, and she wants an exit from the UK. On my live stream on Sunday, I have a look if I get some current polls for that election. I hope I can have some stuff there for you. And another thing is, as of Monday, there will be no more landing ban for planes from the British Isles, announced Austria's Foreign Minister Schallenberg. From Monday, there will be air traffic from London to Vienna again. For example, Foreign Minister Alexander Schallenberg announced in a digital live talk with Austrians abroad in the United Kingdom on Thursday evening the end of the landing ban for passenger aircraft from the island, which had been in force since before Christmas. Flights were stopped after the discovery of a particularly contagious British variant of corona to prevent it from being introduced. But right now it's everywhere anyway. The ban came into force on December 22nd at midnight and has been extended several times, but expires on Sunday at midnight. The landing ban shortly before the holidays in the middle of a pandemic meant, of course, incredibly difficult times when you can't go home, can't see your relatives, your partner, or your family, your friends, said Schallenberg. And he continued, but I think we are almost through it now. We can already see the finish line, so to speak. Only essential international travel is allowed from the UK until May 17th, but Prime Minister Boris Johnson plans to reassess in April. Schallenberg also commented on another hot topic on Thursday. We didn't want Brexit, and, as the European Union, we would have given the British a lot more, he said. It was they who wanted this agreement in this form. At the moment, the technical crunch of the change can be heard. Discussions could also be quite heated, and even before the courts. But in the end, we have an interest in bringing this agreement to life, he said. Great Britain has left the EU but not Europe and is still a very, very important partner for me, Schallenberg said. And, well, that's a fact, but it always depends on governments as well. Another thing is, because of Brexit, the EU is distributing 5 billion euros to countries that are particularly hard hit by Brexit. Germany, of all places, is likely to receive one of the largest chunks, and it could be even more if a proposal from Paris gets through. But the Federal Republic is against it. It was about 1,800 billion euros when the heads of state and government wrestled with each other for almost 5 days and 4 nights last July to approve the reconstruction fund in the corona crisis and the EU long-term budget until 2027. No, it was trillion. Trillion and billion always puzzle me in English. It's understandable that a relatively small pot of money, measured by its size, received hardly any attention at the time. The 27 EU countries agreed at the Marathon Summit last summer to set up a 5 billion euro fund for EU countries that are particularly affected by Brexit. In fact, a working paper of the European Commission, which the German newspaper Welt has at its disposal, shows that a large chunk of money from the so-called Reserve for Adjustment to Brexit is to flow to Germany. Last summer, EU Council President Charles Michel, who coordinated the negotiations, brought the pot into play. The aim of the 5 billion fund was to encourage Belgium, Ireland and other smaller net contributors to agree to the EU's 750 billion reconstruction fund. But now it seems that large EU states like France and Germany could surprisingly profiteer from the Brexit pot, and countries like Belgium or Ireland could be disappointed. The total of 5 billion euros is to be paid out in 2 tranches, of which 4 billion are to flow by the end of this year and a further billion in 2024, if the long-term consequences of Brexit are to be more recognizable. It is planned that the capital cities will pass the money on to affected companies and regions. According to the Commission paper, around 429 million euros of the first 4 billion will go to Germany. This would make the German tax authorities one of the main beneficiaries of the Brexit reserve. More money is only going to the particularly badly affected Ireland, where 991 million euros are going, and to the Netherlands, which can expect 714 million euros. 397 million are to go to France, 305 million to Belgium, and 233 million to Denmark. The influence of Brexit on the German economy is far less than in countries like Ireland, but the size of German economy and the correspondingly large trade with Great Britain alone ensure that a large part of the money flows to Germany. This distribution alone could cause frowns in the severely affected countries. But now even more money threatens to flow into the large EU countries, and far less into the countries that have been particularly hard hit by Brexit. France wants to change the distribution key for the money so that significantly more money would arrive in France. The Commission's legislative proposal is currently being discussed in parallel in the European Parliament and between the member states. In the deliberations between the capitals, Paris is vigorously advocating the corresponding change. The fronts are evidently hardened there. Spain, which would also benefit, supports France. The German federal government, on the other hand, does not want to jeopardize the painstakingly reached European compromise and rejects changes. And that although Germany would actually benefit considerably from the changes. This is shown by the parallel negotiations in the European Parliament, which also has a say in the law. There, the French MEP Valérie Hayer, who oversees the Brexit reserve in the Budget Committee, proposed an amendment that reflects the ideas in Paris. And the proposals of the MEPs from the Macron party La République En Marche has it all. In the finely balanced Commission proposal, which was presumably formulated for a specific distribution, the decisive factor for the allocation of funds was how large the share of trade is in a country's total economic output, in addition to the importance of fishing in British waters. This proposal therefore favors economies for which trade is fundamentally of great importance, such as Ireland, Belgium, or Germany. Ayer's proposal, on the other hand, now wants to base the calculation on how pronounced trade with Great Britain has been so far, in relation to trade with all EU countries. So this key would favor countries that have done much of their trade with the UK, regardless of how important exports are to the overall economy. The reallocations of funds would be substantial. The Belgian MEP Pascal Arimont has calculated what this new calculation formula would bring. According to this, the 4 largest EU economies in particular would benefit enormously. France would receive an additional 263 million euros and Germany an additional 128 million more. Spain could reckon with 290 million euros instead of around 174 million euros. And Italy with around 156 million euros instead of 82.2 million. The amounts for the relatively hardest hit country would, however, decrease. Ireland would lose 200 million, the Netherlands 205 million, and Belgium would lose 131 million. The proposal changes the distribution of the funds very sustainably and ensures that the countries that are particularly badly affected by Brexit get less money, said the Belgian politician from the conservative EPP parliamentary group. He continues, that changes the fundamental philosophy of the reserve, which was actually intended as a solidarity mechanism. In fact, the deliberations in the 3 competent parliamentary committees do not run between the party lines, but between the nationalities of the MEPs, analogous to the positions of the capitals. In Parliament too, the Germans are trying to preserve the European compromise. The proposal is un-European and even nonsensical. After all, it is about cushioning the consequences of Brexit, says CDU MEP Nicola Sturgeon, who sits on the responsible Budget and Fisheries Committee for the EPP parliamentary group. Despite all the weaknesses of the Commission proposal, we should not change the distribution, but ensure that the money flows quickly. Meanwhile, the Greens MEP Rasmus Andresen, who sits on the Budget Committee, warns that distribution discussions are also looming within the recipient countries. The funds should flow directly into the most affected regions and not seep away in the national budgets, said the MEP. The Committee of the Regions, the COR, which is adopting its opinion on the reserve on Friday, is also calling for the regions to have a greater say in distribution. The president of the French region of Brittany, Loic Chesnay-Girard, who is responsible for the issue in the COR, is also calling for an additional billion for the regions concerned. And I hope this doesn't continue, because for Germany that is a discussion that is really unnecessary now, if you listen to all the comments from German MEPs or the German government. And Germany it's not about Germany that need 120 million more. They are paying a lot of that money anyway. They are not getting anything out of it in the end. They could have paid that directly, and that is, but that's not the purpose of Europe. It's about solidarity, as one of the MEPs said. And so I hope that France will really turn around and will stop that nonsense, and that they stay with the compromise. It was a hard-fought compromise, and now, because of upcoming elections, probably allegedly, I must say, they are playing another game. That is annoying. And then in those cases, of course, you can understand partly why people are a bit fed up with some things that happen in Brussels. But even with that, you always have to see the big picture. And that's what I'm trying to bring to every of my viewers. See the big picture and don't put out single events. And the big picture, the EU is worthwhile to be there, and we benefit from it far more than such annoyances take away from us. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.